Welcome to Simply Moms podcast. As always, we're here to empower women, empower moms, empower families. And today, we are going to explore the topic of how our kids are exploring the world with technology. And I have the right person for that, who is none other than Nina. Nina is going to introduce herself.
So thanks for having me. I have different hats, but today on this conversation, I'm here as an academic. So I work at the University of Warwick, where I'm an assistant professor in research methods. I teach students in technology and business courses, so quite relevant to these. I'm a psychologist by background. I'm originally from Chile, and I'm also a mom of 2 children. So I suppose we'll bring those in this conversation.
Yeah, that's the right person to talk about this topic. You know, we have technology in our pockets, in our cars, in our houses. Everywhere we go, people are talking about technology. And we just want to explore how can we use this in a positive light. So grab a drink and get ready. So Nina, I understand that, things have moved on in the classrooms. There's no chalkboards anymore. They're using iPads, computers, and things like that. Can you explain to us how technology is useful in education?
Education, that's an interesting one because actually there's a huge use of technology in education. We're moving towards a world where technology is everywhere. Like now, on our phones, we use our cameras for recording, and it's also enhancing the way in which work is done.
Yeah.
So in education, it can also be integrated to help in similar ways. So from very early ages, so for example, there's artificial intelligence programs that can support children with their reading, speaking when they're not reading right.
Yeah.
We can use it for educational purposes, like having activities that students can do, and that can give teachers more time to focus on the bits that really need doing. It can be integrated in different ways. We saw it during the pandemic, where obviously everything we did was mediated through technology, and our children were learning just with that. But there's different levels and ways in which it can be used in education at different levels. So say I would expect it to be used very rudimentary and not very often with very young children.
Yeah.
Being integrated more to use it in a professional way as people grow up. And then in higher education, it's being integrated more and more. And our current challenge is the use of generative AI. Because I think in education, the key challenge currently in terms of technology, and I think a challenge for parents as well, is how do we make informed decisions when we're using tools, and that we still develop critical analysis and the ability for young people and older people too to decide when the information we get is right or wrong.
Like when I was growing up, we did not have technology. I don't know if it was a good or bad thing. It was both. But the fact that these children have technology, it's good. It's just that we have to learn how to manage it.
I mean, it's kind of there's really good things about technology, but there's huge risks as well.
Yeah.
So it's the key tip for parents is this balance.
Yeah.
So it's knowing what works, what doesn't, and then how can we guide our children in navigating this really complex world? Because without technology, we have more power over who our children talk to. We know what's happening. I mean, there's still risks even within families.
Yeah.
But with technology such as social media, for example, the risk can be higher because the networks are bigger.
Yeah.
Anyone can reach your child without our knowing, and that is a risk. But there's also potential benefits.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be thinking specifically about what about technology and when about technology.
Yeah.
And I was looking at some research, trying to prepare for today, so I won't be talking about what research have said, but I do have some ideas of some key tips. Actually relate a lot to things I've done with my children.
Yeah.
But to be honest, I'm a very laissez-faire. I just let my children do. But that's my general approach. But I suppose it's useful to know what experts are saying about these two.
Yeah, so what are the experts saying about this?
One particular book that I looked at today, really interesting, by two psychiatrist women in the US. The key things that I think we should know as parents. One, there's a huge difference of when children engage with technology. So most of the literature apparently, so what we think we know is that before 2 years old, technology is not great for our children.
Yeah.
However, even then, there are things we don't know. So if it's educational TV, for example, apparently not so bad.
Okay.
But if it's content for adults, so if the mom or the dad are watching TV and the child's there and this is constant, that's not as good for the child.
All right.
But then the question there is that what we don't know is it technology or is it something on that relationship that is not happening, if that makes sense? Elaborate. So, for example, if I'm stuck on my phone as a mom,
Yes. Yeah.
I'm not paying attention to my baby,
Yeah.
but the baby requires attention, requires, like, the way we learn, I believe, is social. So we learn, for example, now we're having a conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
If both of us were stuck on our phone, we wouldn't be having this experience.
Exactly.
So is it that the child is engaging with the screen, which is bad? Or is it that by having that screen engagement, they're missing out on other things?
That is true.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And for a baby, the relationship with the mother and the father and the extended family are so important. So watching TV, for example, as a very basics thing, I don't think it would damage the child in itself. But if that's what they're doing all day, they wouldn't have opportunities to develop in the way they need to develop.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's where balance is really important. And then, hence, when we know about the role of technology after 2 years old, it's much more confusing. So there's no answer on is it good or is it bad.
I have also watched a few podcasts where they're saying under 2 years or 3 years, screen time for the child should be 0.
But should it? Like, we don't really know.
Yeah. But then also, the other question is, you see, there is Miss Rachel, she's someone who helps the kids to learn how to talk. Her content is like 8 months to 12 months or something like that. So if she's making content for the kids for that age, at what age are they gonna utilize this?
Exactly.
Or is that something that should not be? There is a conundrum there.
Exactly. And actually, that's what the research seems to show. That if the content is educational, it might be helpful. And also, for example, that especially with families like ours, I know both of us are migrants in the UK, so we have family elsewhere. And again, technology, even for very, very young children, can be a good connection to extended family.
Exactly.
So having them, you see the phone when we're talking to someone else, it can extend that connection. So it has some positives, even for very young children.
Yeah.
The issue is when, for example, I'm not paying attention to the child at all because I'm stuck on my screen. So I'm using the screen to avoid parenting.
Yeah.
Which sometimes we all want to do, let's be honest. Or when the screen is being used as a parenting method. Apparently that's where the problem is.
That is
it's like, I'm bored of you, so go watch TV.
Yeah.
Which again, we've all done it. Let's be honest.
Yeah, but it's not ideal.
It's not ideal, and it's also it's not showing the child that we care, and it's not giving any ability for children to develop their emotional management. Because it's like the moment you're not happy, go watch TV.
I know.
The moment you're bored, go watch TV.
Yeah, and then they get into that habit of they get up in the morning and TV is my friend.
Yeah, and I'm saying TV, but it could nowadays. Look, I suppose I'm thinking, when we grew up, it was TV. Now it's the phone, it's the friends, it's the social media, etc. So there's so many other distractors, and how do we balance that? I think is the key question.
Yeah. So who decides the content, if this is educational or not?
I mean, I think that's a really good question. And I think it will be the parents' decision what's educational for their child. So we need to have that level there, but also that means that we need to be aware of the content they're watching. We can use guidance, so there will be guidance in boards saying, okay, this is suitable for children's specific age. But in this book I was reading, for example, academic book, they mention, probably again my age rather than current one, although the book was really new, it was 2023, but they mentioned Dora the Explorer, for example, as a good example of an educational program. There are many others that I would remember my children watching back then, and I don't know what's available now, but like there were Blue's Clues. There were others that were clearly structured in a specific way, that they didn't have adult content, and that I could see, yes, there's clearly some element of learning here, but it's, I suppose, my decision, because there's also cultural issues there. They might be focused on cultural issues that I'm against as a parent. I mean, I am, again, personally, very much a liberal, so I want my children to be seeing different things in the world, but again, I'm no one to judge if some other parent has different views. And I think that's where, parental engagement in those decisions is also important.
I see.
I would think. That's kind of my gut feeling.
I see. So it was like, for example, that Miss Rachel, that program.
I've never seen it, so you need to tell me about
it. Yes, there is a way she does her mouth trying to pronounce the words for the kids. So it's mama, something like mama. So you can clearly see that that's educational. She's trying to teach the kids how to talk. Dada. And then she said dada. And then she does like her mouth in a way to encourage the kids to talk. And then she'll bring in other things like that. You know, you can clearly see that that's educational, isn't it?
As a psychologist, as a researcher, I would want to look at the research on what is or not.
Okay.
But I don't know, to be honest. But it sounds to me it wouldn't be damaging.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And how do you know how long? Because from all the research that I've done or podcasts I've watched, they've said 30 minutes maximum for a baby between 0 to 2 years.
Yeah, again, it's about that balance.
Yeah.
So do they have time to be doing the things they need? They also need to be doing. So again, very early age, children or babies need to have this very strong touching the environment. They taste a lot, so they put their hands on everything.
Yeah.
And this is important for the neurological development.
Yeah.
So I would say very little screen time is probably better, because they're not passive, they're doing things. And the other thing at every age, which is really important, is when this happens. Because screen time at night can have impact on sleeping patterns.
That brings me to the question, how can we protect our children from too much screen time?
The question of the year, isn't it? I genuinely have no idea. My children watch far too much. I had a conversation with one of them today, and you know what? I've reread this research, and he's always telling me I use my phone too much.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how about we leave our phones charging in the kitchen during the night? Because having your phone around during the night or screens around you during the night is very tempting, and it's not great. Research shows. Yeah. And he's like, no way, Mom. He's 18, so I've already failed him. You haven't. Now, he's a good child, and actually, my approach has always been that I want them to self-regulate. So, the other key message from the book that I really agree with is that it's about education. So, it's about empowering our children, based on their age group, to make the right decisions. Again, we've been talking a lot about really young children. When children start getting older, they will start engaging with technology more. So again, it's the question about, as a parent, am I using, or are my children using technology as a healthy add-on to their lives, as we can do? I use screens a lot of the time. And I did growing up as well, let's be honest. But also, it's about, do they know what's safe, what's not? So are they using, for example, social media to be with a group of friends where, for example, my children, when they were really young, they explained to me how they were using Discord to connect with friends from their class. That's much safer than if they're in an open social media platform. And apparently, from, again, what I read, the ones that are riskier are Instagram, TikTok and Snapchat. So if we know our children are engaging with those three, we'd have a conversation. Okay, how did you use it? What are your experiences there? And because there are higher risks, like image-based technology has this, especially for girls, but for everyone, huge risk of trying to look perfect and be in a certain way, which is unattainable because we're all putting, or not all, but many people, when we use social media, we put the best selves there rather than our real selves. And that can be very daunting. That then can have negative effects in terms of self-image and self-esteem. So I think we can have those conversations,
We'll come to that.
Are you aware that when we're there, we're not like the real people we really are? Because we're putting this nice photo. I mean, I try to not do that so much on social media, so I tend to try to be myself and show myself as I really am, because I think it's very freeing for others. But I'm in a position of a lot of power to be able to do that. And it's not the case for others. So do you want to look a certain way? Do you need to present yourself to the world in a certain way? Do you need to do things in a certain way to belong? And that's where, again, that ability of our children to make decisions out of their group and talk to us and trust us to have those conversations, I think is really important, if that makes any sense.
It does. That's a lot in there.
I know.
That's a lot in there. So, in terms of protecting them from the screens, teenagers onwards, now we're talking about older kids, 8 years plus onwards, what are some of the tips that you would give?
So,
from the
literature rather than my life, because I'm very bad at it, has already mentioned it. So, I think there can be specific rules on screen time. So, for example, stopping screen time at a certain time at night is really important.
Yeah.
So, if parents can be consistent in that. The other thing is leading by example.
Yeah.
So our children learn from us. So if we're putting a rule with screen for them, keep it for us too, because actually it's affecting us as adults in the same way it's affecting older children.
True.
So it will also affect their sleep. It will also affect our attention. So again, no screen on the table if we're having dinner together. But for all of us, because if the parent's doing the same, then it's unfair, isn't it?
Exactly.
So it's having those opportunities, I think, for real interaction. And from what I've gathered, the current line of thinking is not so much it's screen time. That's the problem. It's the quality of what we're doing there.
The time we're spending together,
but also potentially during screen. So it's about, for example, there's research that shows that active engagement with social media, it's good, while passive engagement, where you're just scrolling, not great.
Yeah.
So again, if our children are using more screens, but they're using it to have deep conversations with their friends, or they're finding social networks that are supportive, then that's positive. As we have seen, like, I don't know if you have that experience as an adult.
Yeah, as an adult, I have had a very good experience with social media. I've met people that I probably wouldn't meet in real life, and made friends with people from far away, so bought products that I needed based on what I'm seeing on social media and things like that. Have support groups as well. So I've talked about some of the things that I've learned on social media. But for the children, I don't know if they're using it in that same way as we are using. Some of them are quite, even way advanced than us. Some of them are already earning money on like TikTok, for example, which is a positive. It's just learning how to use it positively.
Exactly.
However, there is also the bad side. Have you watched this Adolescence?
I haven't, but it's been in everyone's mind, shouldn't it?
Have you watched it? Which we watched it last night a little bit, and it shows that this child. I don't want to spoil it.
No, go for it. I mean, we spoiler everyone. Spoiler alert. But
spoiler alert.
I mean, I suppose. Okay, I haven't watched it, but correct me if I'm wrong, because this is, I suppose, what everyone is thinking. And so, what I get with just what's there in the media currently, it's about. I imagine it's about a child who has these very misogynist views based on what he sees in the world. And he then, no, not really. I mean, no.
The child. Well, from what I've seen so far.
We're digressing completely.
I've not finished it. But what I've seen is that the child, they were communicating on social media. This boy posts something and this girl types some emojis. And apparently they had their code. They mean something. You and me, who don't know the code, we just say, oh, they might be friends. We look at hearts and red, yellow, whatever that might be. And then we don't know what the message is. But the two of them, or him and his friends and her friends, they know what it means. So the police person goes in here after the boy murdered the girl, goes in to find out the information and stuff. And he goes around the school asking what the intention of why the girl was killed. Until his own son put him aside to explain to him. Like the other kids knew what was going on and they're just looking at policeman going around and they're like, he's making a fool of himself.
Okay.
The question that all of them know but none of them will tell him.
Okay, so without spoiling the plot then, what you're kind of saying is that adolescence shows that there might be codes of communication that as adults we're not aware of.
Yes.
And I think that happens with or without technology. Obviously, technology becomes this bigger place where risk can increase.
Yeah.
And I think there are, again, the research shows there are risks of technology. So clear risks include cyberbullying. So where, again, we can be very unprotected, and children in particular, if someone is trolling them, someone's telling them they're ugly, someone's telling them they're inappropriate, that will or can have a very negative effect. So again, it's having that open conversation, being able to say, some people are really cruel. So you need to protect yourself. And what people say to you is, again, there's the protective factor. So what are the people that are saying positive things? And leave that space if it's not a safe space.
Because it can make you do bad things.
Exactly.
For example, that one, going back to that, apparently the girl was bullying the boy with those emojis. But us, we wouldn't know.
Exactly. And sometimes children won't tell us what they're going through. Not because they don't trust us, but because of many reasons. So again, it's having that space that other teenagers or other children who are part of the same network, and we can discuss and we're part of that. But it's like, again, supporting our children in knowing that these things might happen. Other risks, which are very prevalent actually. So apparently children are more and more, according to this book I was looking at, it was 1 in 5 children, teenage years, have shared nude pictures online. And that's really scary to me because they're not ready yet to make decisions in terms of how safe. Like, teens make stupid decisions. Their brains are not ready yet. They're growing and they don't know about long-term impact. I mean, as adults, we make stupid decisions too, but as teenagers, we tend to make them more often. And we want to push boundaries. And then what happens if they do engage in these behaviors? They might be, again, bullied by others. Their images might be distributed. Or even worse, there might be adults on the other side that are manipulating them and exploiting them for sexual purposes, which is super scary. So again, having those conversations, like my son, my 18-year-old, he's more careful with technology than I am. He's always telling me, but like when I had Twitter, I'm not active on Twitter anymore since it became X. I'm not going to say my political views, but he's like, how do you have a good experience with Twitter? Because everyone knows Twitter's horrible. But actually, my community in Twitter was super positive and supportive.
Okay.
So again, it depends how things are done. And how they're using that technology.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
And that brings me to the question of boundaries. How do we set boundaries for our children?
Okay, we need to be very tech aware as parents. So I think the first thing we need to think about is, what do we know and how do we know how our children are using this? I would say that also another thing is that these rules, like, so we set clear expectations.
Yeah.
This is what is that I want you to know. This is how you need to protect yourself. And this is the rules within our family of how these things are done.
Yeah.
So, starting from very early age, again, I would say, based on each family structure and whatever, we can limit access to screens. So having screens in shared areas, for example, rather than in personal areas.
Yeah.
Having rules of leaving phones when they start appearing for everyone, hey, out of our rooms.
Yeah.
At night, so we can take them there during the day, but during the night, keep them out. It will help everyone sleep better.
Yeah.
Again, it's a big ask, I know.
Yeah. We do that one. We do that when we take the screens away from them for the night.
And from you?
But we are the adults but we still put them somewhere a bit. Yeah, but we keep them so that they don't sleep watching screens.
and it's about
happen.
Yeah, but it's about that, like, again, for show with example.
Yeah.
So children do what we do.
True.
The other thing that is really important for balance, so again, the setting boundaries, balance is share the screen time. So
you mean setting periods of screen time?
But sitting together and watching TV together.
Yeah.
Watching programs together.
Yeah.
Playing video games together. Actually, I find that really hard because I don't understand the controllers for these new games they play. However, actually, the research shows that particularly with children that find gaming very soothing, having gaming time with their parents can be very bonding.
Okay.
So using technology to bond rather than avoiding it can be a good strategy.
Okay.
So think about how, so again, when they're really young, we can have control over how they use their technology. So having parental controls on the technology children own or access. So again, it's appropriate to their age, and opening those pathways as they grow older. So then they start developing their own ability to do these things. And it's this, I think it's this continuous communication.
Yeah.
Clear expectations, because we want you to be safe. I'm not doing this because I'm nasty or because whatever. And then that balance of this is a rule because it's for you to be protected.
Yeah.
And how that rule changes as you grow older.
That makes a lot of
I think that's probably the balance.
That makes a lot of sense because I understand they all want to be explained to. When you ask them to do something, they'll ask you why. So yeah, I think it's what you're saying makes a lot of sense. It's important to explain to the children why you're doing something.
And because sometimes we can be wrong. So again, this is a specific example from my life. So at some point, so I have 2 children. One of them has given me permission to talk about him on social media, so I can. So Victor is probably on the autistic spectrum, and he struggles with school attendance. And at one point, I was like, Victor, you need to go to school. And if you don't go to school, I'm going to take away your electronics. Which doesn't really work with him. But because of the various issues, technology is very important for him in terms of engagement. And he told me, but Mom, if you take away my electronics, the only social contact I have is through online meetings with my friends. So you're going to take that away. And he was right. For him, that group of friends he has online, where they play video games together, has been a huge protective factor. Because he doesn't have schooling, he doesn't have friends there. And actually, the only thing he does out of the house is play Dungeons and Dragons with the same friends he's been meeting online since he was like 10. So it was more about, okay, you're right, let's have this conversation. So who are you playing with? Is these people you know? Do I know them? Yes, I do. I hear him, he talks about his names. So I could reassess my belief by having an open conversation. So then the decision was, okay, fair. Just you need to tell me who you're playing with, who they are, tell me about them. We play together more, and also we limit time. So at this time, this ends.
Yeah.
Or you need to do something else besides your screen. But we need to be careful because sometimes when we put rules and they don't make sense, they won't be helpful for our children either.
Yeah. So I guess what you mean is that we have to discuss with the kids.
Obviously based on their age, because you can't discuss with a 2-year-old.
Yes. Discuss, come to an agreement, limit the screen time, put limitations, and then follow through.
Yeah. And have
Follow through.
have parental presence. So that's what their children want.
Yeah.
And they need us to be there for them.
So with all these technology developments going, as it's growing and it's your field, where do you see the world in 10 years from now?
I think my worries with technology is that there will be a huge technology divide.
Okay.
So we've been talking about being worried about our children using too much technology, but there are many, many people around the world, many children around the world that still don't have access at all. And that really worries me. I think there'll be huge potential. So I think at work, in many jobs, people will be using technology consistently. And there's already evidence that the use of certain artificial intelligence approaches, for example, are making us more efficient. Again, I don't know what will happen. I hope my positive self goes, what will happen is that technology will free us because we will be able to do more things. We will be able to connect more. But then there's the risk that won't happen. And that we will, and it's the humans that are behind it that are the problem, not the technology, I don't think. But that technology might be too invasive. And again, are we working our hours because we can? Does that have a negative effect on our health? And I think, again, it's about what we really need for our children and for ourselves is to be able to be critical users of technology.
Yeah.
Rather than to avoid it or to
just think that it's evil.
Exactly. And if we, again, that's a little with boundaries. So if we say there's no screen in my house, we're not training our children to live in a real world where technology is everywhere.
That's you just made
on that positive note.
You made me think about so many things in this very small time. And I'm thinking,
when you ask me about 10 years time, I'm like, there's a part of me that's thinking, we have implants that will help. I mean, we already do for certain things. So people with Parkinson's already can have implants to help them control conditions, or cochlear implants. They're technology implanted, and I really think that maybe not 10 years, but maybe we start having enhancements through technology. And are we going to engage in that? Are we going to leave it? There's transhumanism. I don't know if you've heard that.
Oh my God.
And there's all of these really interesting, very daunting things happening. And our children will be in that world. So how will we react to that? Who knows?
Yeah. How are we preparing them for that world? And that brings me to a question. So if, for example, I have a child who's interested in tech and they want to do a tech career going forward,
Brilliant.
How would I advise my child in that respect? Do I to limit their screen time? Do I to make sure that they don't get involved so much in using technology? How do I help them develop their skills in a positive way without putting the negative spin on things?
And that's why, again, it's about not necessarily how much screen time. It's how are we using that screen time? Are we using that screen time to learn and engage with others? Are we, again, they're with technology careers, so you can learn a lot of skills and be an ethical hacker, or you could become a really bad person and start hacking people to steal their money. But it's the same skill.
Yeah.
So it's building our, again, it's that critical analysis, it's knowing who we are, what our values are as a family,
Yeah.
how we maintain being part of society as well as the online world, because it's part of it. And it's like, do we have other things? Again, we need to, everyone, children in particular, need to move, exercise. If we're all time on the screen, we're not having that.
Yeah.
So how, rather than having, I'm limiting your screen time, okay, let's go for the positive. I saw you had another podcast on positive parenting.
Yeah.
So rather than the limit is, okay, great, but how about you commit to having some fun with your friends as well?
Yeah.
So go out, and I don't know if the child like football, which mine don't, but if they like football, go play football every week for at least an hour.
Yeah.
So
Or
we're
go for a
encouraging positive behavior. Yeah,
Yes.
take your dog out, or just go. Let's go together and have an ice cream. So let's go for a walk and have an ice cream. Like, it doesn't need to be like sports,
Yeah.
but we need to do things differently. So maybe rather than I'll limit your screen time, okay, let's do something fun together as a family.
Yes.
Yeah,
I agree. Let's go for a walk, for example.
or whatever we like doing. Not to the cinema though. That would be more screen time.
Let's go to the park.
Let's go play mini golf.
Yeah.
There's so many things we can do.
Yeah. So yeah, that's been a very, very, very interesting topic. Any last words?
No, just reiterate the same thing. So
Yeah.
key messages are lead by example.
Yeah.
It's about balance.
Yeah.
Taking into account at what development stage our children are. I think building trust in communication, and taking control when we need to, but not when we don't.
Mm-hmm. Very, 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 very good nuggets right there. So thank you so much, Nina. Thank you for coming on our podcast. I'm sure we'll host you again soon. And thank you everyone for watching Simply Moms. Thank you for subscribing, and happy parenting. Keep watching, keep subscribing, keep sharing. Ciao.
Bye.